What is the proper penance of a sated vampire? What happens if you drink dead man's blood? What are the first few hours of vampirism like at all? Who constitutes as worthy prey for a vampire? What is the great conversion? Who did it better, Cruise and Pitt or Reed and Anderson? What makes a vampire? And, most importantly, did Louis eat the baby? These are questions that do not all necessarily get answered, but are explored in Interview with a Vampire, Season 1, Episode 2, After the Phantoms of Your Former Self. Hi, my name is Kirsten, and welcome to my channel. If you haven't joined me before, I hope that you are excited to explore AMC's Interview with the Vampire, because that is all that I talk about on here. Last week, I began my Season 1 throwback. But if you're interested in Season 2, I did do live reactions for the most part to the episodes as they were airing. But I was also figuring YouTube out at the time, so they're not quite as organized as these ones are. And I will be revisiting Season 2 after we get through Season 1. But last week we did Season 1, Episode 1, in Throes of Increasing Wonder. And this week we are looking at Season 1, Episode 2, After the Phantoms of Your Former Self. Just like last week, for people that did watch last week's, I do have 4 pages of notes. Nothing too crazy detailed, but a lot more book tie-in as well this week. So we will be visiting within the pages of this guy. And yeah, I don't want to take up too much time doing an intro. I feel like I always talk way too much at the beginning. So we're just gonna dive right into the episode and get talking about everything, because this is Louis' baby vampirism. This is Alan Taylor's second episode that he directed, and in my opinion, it is the most classically gothic episode of the series. It is the episode that really makes it clear that this show incorporates so many different aspects beyond just the horror genre or even the romance genre, but the comedy genre, drama. The comedy one really stands out in this episode. Yeah, there's just a whole lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. Okay, so the first scene of this episode is the Marius painting, which is actually an insane thing to open with in episode 2 of this series. Marius does not, as far as we really know, exist in this book. He's not brought up, he's not real, he's not relevant to any of the conversation that Louis has with anybody. And so to open with this, and to open with it in Louis and Armand's Dubai apartment, which I know we don't know it's Louis and Armand's Dubai apartment, but still. And to have Armand come in and make commentary, however brief, on it, that's actually a crazy thing to do. I think it's interesting that Armand has Marius paintings and so willfully displays them. And I also think it's interesting his specific wording of little of his work survives. For people that don't know, Armand at this point thinks Marius is dead, and thinks he's dead after an attack that happens from the Roman Coven in Venice, Italy, while Armand was one of Marius's boys in his house that was there. And I know I said it in my last video, I have a friend, she's really old school, Vampire Chronicles, and Armand is her favorite character. And we had discussed during episode 1, we thought Rashid was Armand. We were like, that's Armand, there's no way it's not Armand. And then we had a discussion where she was like, Kirsten, I can't go into this thinking that it's Armand, because if I do, it's going to change the way that I view everything. And then if it ends up not being Armand, it's going to have ruined everything that I went in thinking. And then we started episode 2 and she's like, how am I supposed to not think that it's Armand? Like, really? After this? The other thing too, and again, she knows Armand and understands Armand better than I do and has read that book far more than I have. But she said that it was abundantly clear in this episode as well, with kind of the overly extensive hospitality, the very organized workers, human workers specifically, and just all this other stuff. She's like, there's no way that that's not Armand. That is the peak, like, Armand way that he deals with things. So yeah, so this was her kind of immediate, if we weren't quite sure after episode 1, she was 99.9% sure after this opening first 53 seconds of this episode that Rashida's Armand. We are looking at Armand.
Sways a bit, but that is according to its design given the height. We call it the groan.
Do you remember when people thought that the groan was like all sorts of crazy things?
I mean, is it only work or are you and he?
Is it only work or are you and he?
I serve
a god.
A god.
You know, I should have really clocked Armand in the way that he views this relationship with Louis from this scene alone, and I didn't. I had such a skewed view of Armand and Louis going into season 2, and it was all my own fault. Like, I've read the books, I knew. Armand is a terrifying character to me. He is simultaneous. He's such a paradox, such an oxymoron of a character. He is so reliant on other people, and yet he is utterly in control of everything at any given point, and will die if he's not in control of everything at any given point. And we're gonna see it in just a second when Daniel sits down to start eating and all these meals start coming out. The ritualisticness of the way that this is served, the ritualisticness of every aspect of their lives in Dubai. It's incredibly calculated and incredibly controlled and entirely run by Armand. And under the guise of this is what's best for us. And he's just a scary character. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on Armand. And I don't dislike Armand. I don't want this to come across as like, oh, you hate him. I don't hate Armand. I'm scared of Armand. And I feel like I understand a lot of Armand's trauma, but it doesn't mean that the person that it's turned him into isn't absolutely terrifying. And I find him so scary. And these are those like few snippets that you get in these early episodes, because as season 1 progresses, he gets in the episodes longer and longer. He's in episode 1 for just like split seconds. Episode 2, again, like couple seconds here and there. Episode 3 is when like we finally have him doing a bit more, and then 4 is where he actually has that whole opening scene of taking Daniel to the reading room. And it just progressively becomes this, okay, he's more involved. Oh, that's Armand. And the more involved he gets, and the more that you watch season 1 and then go into season 2 and then come back to these early episodes of season 1, it just highlights how much power he really wields and how long he's been wielding it without anybody to question or challenge him whatsoever. Okay, anyway.
Fattening me up for the inevitable end?
These weird gourmet food things.
Roasted apple bonbon.
Like, what is that? Okay, so the blood bag thing and the comment about the farm. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't read the later books as often and as frequently as I've read the earlier books in the series, but I know there's a thing with Fareed and the vampires getting more involved with modern medical like treatment and aspects and things. The idea of the farm is really interesting in terms of Louis, and I'm curious to see if this holds up and continues into season 3 now that he's not with Armand and he's out of that controlled environment. Because, and I talked about it some last video, but Louis in Dubai is a unvampiric. He doesn't act like a vampire at all. He's staying awake during the daytime. He doesn't sleep in a coffin. He sleeps in a bed. He goes about with this like, I'm in like full control of my vampire nature, yet his way of control is like pretending that it's not real. And I find this idea of a farm intriguing going into season 3 because it does make logical sense, and I think it really does make more sense for the vampires of the modern age to have blood bags and to be doing things with that. But at the same time, I wonder if Louis is kind of embracing of who he is and of the dark gift, and everything is going to mean that he goes back and starts killing people. Like, I don't know. I'm curious if this farm like holds up that far.
I want to apologize for my outburst earlier.
Okay, so this immediate first interaction between Louis and Daniel. Louis walks in looking very serious, very controlled, and he says, I want to apologize for my outburst earlier. Now, mind you, the way that episode 1 ends is with him recalling his and Lestat's hearts beating as he was turned into a vampire, and then he says the end, the beginning, and there's like that single blood tear. Is that an outburst? Is that what we're calling an outburst? And then you think about the way that Armand has reacted to Louis's emotions at times, and we don't get a ton of it, but we get it in season 2, episode 5. Like his "here come the dramatics," when Louis does actually showcase a lot of emotion. And you think about that paired with the brain control and the mind wiping and everything else, and it's just like, how much of that is Louis and how much of that is Armand speaking right there? Oh, see, he's so scary. And then this is immediately followed by what is essentially one of the big idea questions and statements of Interview with a Vampire, which is
Memory is a monster.
And I know season 2 had these really great taglines of memory is a monster and memory is the monster. And the way that that singular word changes the meaning of that so much. And it's... Daniel says this right after Louis says, like, I've had an outburst. And this is after recalling his turning, which was also his wedding to Lestat. And I want to do a video after I do season 1 where I talk about season 1 just as a whole, and we like look at it as this larger picture. And one of the things I want to talk about in it is the framework of storytelling, and the framework specifically of Interview with a Vampire season 1 and season 2 as a romance. It is a love story. It is completely centralized in this relationship, and to deviate off that path in upcoming seasons would take away from the core value of the show, and I don't think the writers are going to do that, but I find it interesting when fans don't want it to go that way, because I don't know how else it could do anything that would make sense. But that's another story. But yeah, the memory is a monster getting brought up right after this for the first time in my life, I was seen, and Louis' reaction and thought process to that. And the way that he felt so loved in that moment. And you have to wonder, I think Assad did an interview, and I have to find it, I don't remember, and I think it was after, like right after season 1 and like the Armand reveal, where the interviewer asked something about, you know, Armand is sitting there having to listen to Louis tell all these stories about Lestat. You know, does that hurt him? And Assad was like, well, absolutely. Like, you know, here is this person that Armand considers the love of his life, and he's over here talking about somebody else that he's spent time with, and he's talking about them in this almost worshipful kind of way. Yeah, it makes me really question about what Armand did to Louis right after this outburst thing. But anyway.
And AB negative.
I don't know if all the vampires have favorite blood types. I don't know my blood type. I need to figure that out so I can figure out who... Never mind.
Through which I would pass before my apprenticeship began.
What's happening? Your body is confused. Your lungs feel like water. Your heart fire. You feel as if you're dying.
Because you are.
Because you are. And then there's the red shirt. I recognize the hypocrite I am, emphasizing cleanliness after I overindulged. But proper disposal is the penance of a sated vampire. You want to
So I love this first scene coming back to Lestat and Louis in New Orleans. Louis is dying, and it's just hysterical because in any other circumstance, Lestat's nightmare self would be losing his mind over the concept of Louis, you know, any kind of pain or dying. But he's cool with it because he knows what's going on. He's like, oh, you're fine. Like, your body's confused. You're dying. It's gonna be great. Like, whatever. Don't worry about it. And he's just like yapping, and Louis like stumbling. That's what I mean. It's a comedy. Just stumbling behind him, just absolutely losing his mind. And I just love the dramatics of it. There's a part in just a second where he like, you just hear him like screaming, like falls over. That's just like stuffing bodies in that grave. They're a mess.
So?
Okay, so Louis going to drink the dead priest's blood. So in Interview with the Vampire, there is a scene where Lestat is explaining to Louis that you can't drink the blood of somebody that's dead. And it's on page 27 in this edition. And it says, let me find it. So Louis is drinking from someone. And he says, I was drowsing, falling into weightlessness, and then Lestat pulled me back. He's dead, you idiot, he said with his characteristic charm and tact. You don't drink after they're dead. Understand that? I was in a frenzy for a moment, not myself, insisting to him that the man's heart still beat, and I was in an agony to clamp onto him again. I ran my hands over his chest, then grabbed at his wrist. I would have cut into his wrist if Lestat hadn't pulled me to my feet and slapped my face. This slap was astonishing. It was not painful in the ordinary way. It was a sensational shock of another sort, a wrapping of the senses, so that I spun in confusion and found myself helpless and staring, my back against a cypress, the night pulsing with insects in my ears. You'll die if you do that, Lestat was saying. He'll suck you right down into death with him if you cling to him in death, and now you've drunk too much. Besides, you'll be ill. His voice grated on me. I had the urge to throw myself on him suddenly, but I was feeling just what he'd said. And it's such an interesting dynamic shift, and you think about how the interview that Louis did in 1973 is very much exactly the stuff that we hear. Well, I mean, again, it's only brief snippets, but it's exactly what we hear in this book. And there's just such a mixture of things, and you know that like there had to be somewhat of a middle ground at some point, because you know that Lestat can be coarse at times, and so it's like, yeah, there might be some truth there, but also Louis was just like, his voice grated on me, and I'm like, sir, no it didn't, you loved him. Just the difference and like the dichotomy of like the much more rough like handling of Louis attempting to drink dead man's blood versus this very no, don't do that. Like, just very gentle, like, no, don't do that. Okay, come on, let's go. Yeah, obviously, for our show especially, this version is exactly, as Louis says at some point, it is a much more nuanced take of the story, and it's something that he's had time to sit through and think about and recall what's there. And so this much more gentle teacher, Lestat, is one of my favorite aspects of this episode, because he's not perfect, and as we know, Lestat doesn't tell a lot of information that he should have to Louis, and I know why he doesn't tell the information, but he still doesn't tell the information, and Louis doesn't know why Lestat's not telling him the information. So it's just this whole cycle. Anyway, let's get back into the comedy aspect, because Louis is about to fall over. See, Lestat's just humming. He's screaming, the priest's bones are breaking. Louis. One of my favorite pictures is from this episode, and it's one of like the professional shots on the AMC Press Center. I'll post it. It's so good. It's like right when he comes over there. Okay, so look at the angel. So for people that haven't seen the 1994 movie, this like look at the angel in the graveyard, and the like glitch effect on it is very much a call to the 1994 movie when Louis first turned. He gets turned at the Point du Lac plantation in the movie, and he sees like an angel, and it does like that same thing, but its eyes also like move and follow him. And it's like, it's a really iconic scene. Louis' entire turning and everything in the movie is, I think, very iconic. And the see with your vampire eyes. I haven't watched the movie since August of 2022. And I'd watched it because I was so excited for the show. And I was like, oh, let me watch the movie. I'm so excited. And now I haven't touched it since. But I used to watch it. I used to watch it like once a month for a really long time. So I remember it too well. There's the spark. There's the spark. What I love about this scene is like Louis crazy right now. Like he's high as a kite. He's feeling it. Lestat's just high on life, man. Look at him. Lestat reminds me, speaking of that, there's a character that Lestat reminds me of a little bit, and especially it's really fitting for rock star Lestat stuff, but it's the main rock star guy and Almost Famous. I can't remember his name right now, but you know who I'm talking about. He reminds me of him a little bit, and like the scene where he's like high and he's on the roof and he's just like, what do you say, like, I'm a golden god or something. Like that gives me Lestat vibes. That gives me Lestat vibes in this scene, which is just funny because he's just high on life. He's not doing anything. He's just got the love of his life. He's thrilled. He's having a good time.
Lestat's blood was giggling inside me.
Okay, so that's one of my favorite lines of the series, which is Lestat's blood was giggling inside me. And I love it just because it evokes such an image. And I think it evokes such an image also of how freeing vampirism felt for Louis, especially like in these first couple moments and stuff before he realizes like the weight of vampirism and the weight of immortality and the weight of taking life and everything. This idea that vampirism is giving him everything that he could ever want, that just simple image of Lestat's blood was giggling inside me. It's such a good line.
You were fucking loaded.
Beyond articulation.
Your ears will pick up the world like a Madeleine symphony. Follow my voice.
A single string.
Single string.
So this scene reminds me, and I made a post on my Instagram about it a couple months ago, like a month or two, actually. When Claudia and Louis are turning Madeleine in season 2, episode 6. There's that light that's up above on the table, and there was like in this scene there's that like really up close focus shot of the light, and you can hear the electricity humming, and then Lestat says, "Follow my voice, a single strain," and Claudia says something to Madeleine along the lines of just listen for my voice.
Madeleine, if you get scared, you just look at that light. Listen to my voice. I won't let anything go wrong.
And everything, and obviously the parallels between Lestat and Claudia are endless, and that's just one of the many things, the way that they both are with the love of their life when it comes to like their turning and everything, eerily similar. And it's so scary because obviously Claudia wasn't here for this. She doesn't know. And I wonder now that Louis recalled all this and time has passed, I wonder if he sometimes thinks about how similar Claudia and Madeleine were in a lot of ways, like to him and Lestat. Makes me so sad. AMC, if you would like to do a mini series where it's like, LOL, just kidding, if everything was happy, and it's like Louis and Lestat happy, and like Madeleine and Claudia happy, and they like come to visit all the time. I think you should do that. Just let them do that.
Are you hungry, Louis?
Oh my god, he's such a baby vampire.
Your brothers and sisters once
Like a
know that you're
baby.
savory inferiors. A young tempranillo, fleshy and tart. A primitivo, hints of iron, rather plain otherwise.
I'm rolling my eyes because I think he looks very nice in that scene, but I'm irritated about it.
Times restraint is your most powerful weapon.
Louis' first thing is like, I'm gonna go after the big old strong man over there. I mean, girly pop, I also appreciate you going for what you want. I get it, but
you'll spend most of your evening trying to separate him from his crew. You'll race his son for the kill, and when he turns up missing in the morning, you'll have half the frigate on the prowl looking for him. In the beginning,
like I said, I love Lestat's much more gentler truth in terms of the way that we're seeing him in these early teachings of Louis. And I love that we get like full information and explanation for why Louis should and shouldn't do these things. Louis says it in the books, and he says it actually, it's in like a brief snippet of season 2, episode 5, when he's doing the interview with Daniel in 73, where he's talking about like Lestat's preferred kills and everything. And so we know that the vampires have specific things that they go after and that they are attracted to in terms of like bloodlust. And so Lestat's like, no, like I get it. Like this is what you want. However, this is why we shouldn't do that, especially right now. You're literally like 5 minutes old. And so we're gonna go after this because it's easier, makes more sense, gonna cause less trouble, the end. And it's such a good hunting advice for a vampire. And it makes me wish a little bit more. I know Claudia had much more of a natural killer instinct than Louis did, but I wish that we had some more of her like earliest hunting days. And the way that I'm sure that Lestat went about this in the same way with her, only, you know, she took to it better.
Here you go. I was a baby bird in Lestat's nest, not yet ready to hunt.
I was a baby bird in Lestat's nest. I want to do a video so badly on the maker-fledgling bond, and specifically the parental aspects of the maker-fledgling bond, because it's part of what makes the vampirism so strange and so, I think, weird for some people who aren't used to the weird gothic tropes that show up in things. To me, the parental aspect, I mean, not only does it make sense, but it it's part of what makes everything so daunting when it comes to the vampires. When you look at like Lestat and the vampires that he's made, like with Claudia, that's the only one that actually was intended to be a child, like that you were like taking in and treating like your own child. All of his other fledglings that are, you know, big ones, there's Nikki, you know, who's intended to be a love interest in a lot of ways, even though he was not, I mean, at that point they were not really, but anyway. There's Louis, who was intended to be the love of his life forever. Thank God that one's still happening. And there's Gabrielle, which like is probably the most interesting in terms of dynamics with Lestat, because she is his mother, weird boundary issues, and then he makes her and becomes like her parent. And so I'm always very intrigued with the parental aspect, and like the parental stuff comes up a lot within the series. And I think like one of the most iconic ones is when Louis is recalling their plan to kill Lestat. He says, "Could the children murder the father?" Referring to him and Claudia as the children and Lestat as the father. It's just such an interesting, weird dynamic. And what I love about it is that it incorporates those gothic elements without it feeling just like going through the necessary steps to make this like a tropey gothic creation. Yeah, the whole parental maker fledgling thing is actually crazy.
Taking my daughter to look at horses, Palominos, you know, those Indian types that run free out west. And
Louis is so hungry.
Doing pretty good for myself.
That's a hungry kitten. That like slow blink he does. He's like,
I'm getting her one of these, you know, special horse. We go down to the fairground. She says,
I've seen a cat that looks just like that.
so funny.
Those big old eyes, just.
I tell her, honey wants to work.
Again, this is another one of those moments, I said it in my last video, this is another one of those moments I'm really proud of Lestat, where I feel like he's exhibiting much more patience than I'm used to him having. He's like sitting there like dealing with this conversation with this very boring man, and just sitting there chilling, but he would do anything for Louis, and if that means sitting there for this easy kill, that's fine.
You're beginning to frighten the man.
It's in his head. Louis, that can't be right. Guess we'll find out in season 2, episode 8.
Maggie, that's why your daddy sells tractors.
Why is this man trying to sell them tractors? Do they look like they are men trying to buy tractors?
Go ahead and take that.
What part of them looks like tractor people?
I am talking about gas powered.
Yeah.
His bloody sleeves.
You, on your sleeve.
Whenever you're ready, Louis. Okay, real quick before we get into Lestat's teaching of how to drink the blood. So these cups that Lestat has in this scene, I have them. I found them online. I have a set of, is there 3 of them? I think it's 3. There's one over there, this one, I think there's one over there. Yeah, 3 of these. Little cups. Gonna pose so you can see it with it. I love them. They weren't anything like crazy, but I'm like 99% sure they're like exacts. Hold on, let me look. I mean, yeah, it just looks normal sized in my hand and miniature in Sam Reed's hands, but same cup. I don't use them for anything. Sorry, something fell. I don't use them for anything, but they're so cute. Anyway.
No, you don't bite the blood. You suck it. Yes. That's better. Good.
Such a proud teacher, dad, husband.
I need a more efficient way of ridding the waste.
I gotta go home.
This is your home now, Louis. Breathe.
I gotta collect money from the cribs.
I have all the money we need. Breathe.
I have to go.
Okay, so I love the way that this scene immediately highlights the difference in Louis and Lestat's thinking. And I think it's a lot of what highlights why they don't work at first. But Lestat's very straightforward way of thinking is really admirable in this, but also it just shows, I think while he knows and understands Louis in a lot of ways, it also shows that he doesn't understand, I think, the depth of Louis' like inner turmoil, and also what Louis being what Louis' morals look like, what Louis' idea of family looks like, and what Louis being like a black man looks like to him. And so like what I mean by that is Lestat buying this townhouse and furnishing this townhouse and taking Louis shopping with him to furnish the townhouse was always intended with this idea that Louis was going to live in this house. And now that Louis has been turned and Louis is a vampire, Lestat's just like, well, like, this is your home. I have all the money we need. None of this matters anymore. Like, just, you're fine. Where for Louis, that's not the case. And so it immediately begins to show where they diverge in their ways of thinking, because Louis does get caught up still in his human affairs, where Lestat got caught up in human affairs in the sense that he turned the two humans that he needed to turn into vampires. But Lestat is very good at adapting and very good at enduring. Anyway, fascinating. Like, just the highlight of this.
Hey, Grace and Paul.
Oh dear.
You didn't fucking hear me!
The way that shove, like, Lestat's a bajillion times stronger than Louis, but it was unexpected. Why are you letting him go out in the sun?
I can find that very difficult.
I swear to God. Like, I love him, but like, why are you letting him go out into the sun? Can you go get him? I was saying something. Oh yeah, the shove. Like, Lestat's a bajillion times stronger than Louis. He looks so cute, his little coat over his head. And the shove was just so unexpected. Louis didn't know he had that strength. Lestat wasn't expecting any of it. Alright, the bridal carry. Okay, so first of all, this song that's playing is called The Sun Gives Life to Everything But Us, which is like a piano collaboration that Daniel Hartttt did. I'm gonna mess up the name. It's like Sumi. Hold on. The sun gives life to everything but us. Interview with Shruti Kumar. And it was in like my top 100 songs of 2022. I don't know why. I was obsessed with the piano in it. So like whenever I hear it, I'm immediately like, the bridal carry up the stairs is wild. I'm not gonna comment on it right now because I won't say anything normal, so I'm just gonna keep watching. No, right. Can you keep your clothes on?
Oh yes. Perfect setting for a vampire home.
I'm just gonna look at the screen again. It's just easier. Put your clothes on. This is just unnecessary.
We'll get to your own.
Isn't there this? This was this audio that used to be on TikTok that was like, he's trying to seduce me.
This is an extraordinary one.
Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Death, rebirth, coming out, homicide. Too many
Death,
firsts for
rebirth,
one night.
Coming out, homicide. Too many firsts for one night. Again, kind of going back to the whole thing with like Lestat adapts really well. Lestat went through so much with his turning into vampirism. And there's a couple key differences in the circumstance beyond just like the horrificness of Lestat's turning. But Lestat was entirely alone with his turning. You know, he gets turned and Magnus is like, bye, and then throws himself in a fire, and Lestat's like, okay. And he has enough thought process to be like, I can't go back because I don't really know what I am, and I can't control this because I don't know what I am, and no one's told me how to do anything, so I'm not going to go back to anybody. So he's left by himself, and so he just, it's sort of that survival instinct thing. Like, you do what you have to do if you have to do it. Louis isn't necessarily in that same boat, in the sense of he has someone here to guide him along those first bits of vampirism. But the problem is that because Lestat didn't have a teacher, he doesn't necessarily know how to teach. And so where he just did everything because he had to, he's just kind of in this like rigid structure of like, this happens, this happens, that happens, we go, 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 go. Where I think had Lestat had approached this to Louis earlier, like before turning him, and like explained some of this to him, obviously the outcome could be different. And I also think, while I think that his way of taking Louis on this first hunt was very gentle, I think it could have been different as well. And obviously I don't have any issues with anything that happened. It's plot relevant. It's just, I think people do forget sometimes how overwhelming that was for Louis. Like, he has just experienced Paul's suicide, being blamed for it by his mother, all the grief and terror of all that, which is all coming right off of this like daunting realization of his own sexuality and these overwhelming feelings that he has for another man. And then he finds out Lily's dead, and he kind of knows what's going on at this point. And then there's whole like vampire reveal, which is done in this terrifying way of killing two priests that he's known since childhood. And then immediately followed by like, okay, just kidding, you're married now, he loves you, you love him, everything's great, just kidding, you're a vampire, you have to kill people. Like, there's just a lot happening. And so Louis is like, it's too many firsts, too much happening. And yes, I would agree, and there was too much happening there.
Shame of queer theorists everywhere.
I got in that coffin on my own free will. In the quiet dark. We were equals.
White master, black student, but equal in the quiet dark.
Provocation.
Provocation.
Daniel's so passive aggressive with Louis. It makes a lot of unnecessary comments, I think, at Louis a lot. And I think it stems from that like place of fear that he has of vampires still, that place of intrigue that he has about vampires still. And also he doesn't have anything to lose in his head, so like, why not? But man, like the way that he approaches things with Louis, one of my favorite things throughout like the first two seasons is seeing how Daniel and Louis' relationship transforms from this very antagonistic, all things considered, relationship to like season 2, episode 5, when they're uncovering like their San Francisco memories together. It's so cute. Like, they become friends, and like a little handshake at the end, and then Daniel mind calling Louis. Sorry, it just reminded me of like one of my favorite, I don't know if it's a tweet or a Tumblr post, I can't remember, but it's about how did Louis find out Daniel was a vampire, and somebody was like, Daniel in Louis' head, Louis, you will never believe this. And Louis was just like, what? That probably is how he found out. That's so sad. Oh, anyway, antagonistic. Provocation. He does this a lot to Louis in season 1, and I don't like it. It makes me really mad, especially because he is an invited guest to this. Like, Louis does invite him. Yes, I know the whole thing with him, whatever, but like, he is an invited guest, and like, why are you being mean? Why? He's trying to uncover memories, Daniel. Can you just be nice?
Vampires are killers. Apex predators whose all-seeing eyes were meant to give them detachment. The ability to see a human life in its entirety. Not with any mawkish sorrow, but with the thrilling satisfaction of being the end of that life. And having a hand in the divine plan.
So this speech that Louis gives to Daniel right here is an exact speech that Lestat gives Louis in Interview with the Vampire. And so it's on page 74 of the version that I have. And it comes right after the scene in the books where Lestat kills the 2 prostitutes. And that's a very iconic scene in the movie. And it's sort of the scene that the tenor killing at the end of this episode is replicating in a lot of ways. But it comes also right after a speech that Lestat gives at the end of this episode. It's interesting, like how everything can tie in these ways. But so here it says, he sat back now and drained the glass, and his eyes moved over the unconscious woman. Her breast heaved and her eyebrows knit as if she were coming around. A moan escaped her lips. He'd never spoken such words to me before, and I had not thought him capable of it. Vampires are killers, he said now. Predators whose all-seeing eyes were meant to give them detachment, the ability to see a human life in its entirety, not with any mawkish sorrow, but with a thrilling satisfaction in being the end of that life and having a hand in the divine plan. That is how you see it, I protested. The girl moaned again. Her face was very white. Her head rolled against the back of the chair. That is the way it is, he answered. You talk of finding other vampires. Vampires are killers. They don't want you or your sensibility. They'll see you coming long before you see them, and they'll see your flaw. And distrusting you, they'll seek to kill you. They seek to kill you even if you were like me, because they are lone predators and seek for companionship no more than cats in the jungle. They're jealous of their secret and of their territory. And if you find one or more of them together, it will be for safety only. And one will be the slave to another, the way you are of me. So this speech coming around, and then Louis following it with, that's the way you see it. Louis, and I said this in last episode or last video too, Louis is emulating a lot of things about Lestat, but he's emulating the worst of him in a lot of ways. And he quotes a lot of things Lestat says to him. And actually I'm going to talk about one of those in just a little bit. It's in season 2, episode 6, where he's like quoting an exact thing that Lestat says to him in season 1, episode 2, and everything. So the things that Lestat says to him, they stick out to him, and he remembers them very vividly. But he picks and chooses what he wants to follow and remember. So he now is going through this whole, vampires are killers, like we are these predators, we are whatever, yet he won't fully commit to what this dark gift is. He won't accept what the dark gift is, and that doesn't happen until the end of the season 2. I just think, again, I think it highlights the thing that Louis is like so adamantly in both the books and the show, which is like he is very hypocritical, and he is kind of a snob. And so you see that coming into play here, because he's being very, very pick and choosy about what he believes and what he doesn't believe, and very much like what I say now. It's what being a vampire is, and there's no question about it, when in reality everything is questionable and everything should be turned on its head at any given point.
Amen in English. That's when I embraced it. And now I have English consonants to thank for this astonishing job.
These are nightmares I'm having, Lestat, not dreams. Ben, how's your arm?
I love both Louis and Lestat asking about his arm that Lestat broke.
And you know that because you got in his head just now.
Vampires can read minds, Moshe.
Right. And you gonna sit on that skill for how long? You gonna make me beg?
I'm not allowed to
The
comment.
ability to read a mind and most useful boils down to three things. I want food, I want sex, I want to go home.
So, also about like a month or two ago, I made an edit for Instagram. I was rewatching this episode. I was doing my episode 2 look, and I find this really interesting because Loustat says every human thought comes down to 3 things. I want food, I want sex, I want to go home. And obviously it's more nuanced than this exactly, but that I feel like is like the core of Lestat in a lot of ways. And again, nuance, there's like the subcategories of those things. But Lestat enjoys the kill. Lestat enjoys he enjoys being a vampire, and he's good at it. So this like I want food is a constant thing that he doesn't have to really like question. He's just like, yeah, like I want this, I'm gonna go do it. I want sex. Lestat and love and sex and everything are all just very like free love, free whatever. Like he doesn't question those things either. If he wants it, he's gonna have it. He's non-discriminating, you know. And then I want to go home. And you think of home also as not just like a place, but a person, in the way that Lestat craves and needs that companionship and everything. And I think it goes into, and I think there's an interview, I'd have to find it again, that Sam Reed gave, where he's talking about like Lestat and Louis, like the beginning and end of like season 1 and season 2, and how part of what attracts all these vampires to Louis is that he is the most human vampire of all. And so there's like this absolute humanity to Louis no matter what. And then so Louis is like this human thing, while Lestat is this entirely vampiric thing. But in reality, when you get to the end of the series, you see that Lestat is much more human than any of us, including himself, I think, thought possible, and that Louis is much more a vampire than anybody, including himself, thought possible. And so the way that you know, Lestat having the same 3 thoughts as humankind, like, I don't know, I think that those can be tied in.
The shed.
You can't read my mind anymore?
The architects of our creation mean to humble us. We're at the mercy of the other's discretion.
The architects of our creation. Louis goes to say that those exact words to Madeleine when he and Armand and Claudia and Madeleine are at that like Last Supper dinner before the betrayal. And Madeleine is like figuring like, oh, I can't read his mind. And she's like looking at him, he's like, what? And she's like, I can't hear your thoughts. And he starts to say, the architects, and he catches himself and he's like,
that's just the way it is.
Yes, but
you can't, like, sorry. And it's just this constant way that Lestat still haunts, constantly haunting the narrative of season 2. You know, at that point, like, Louis has been with Armand, and Armand's been away from the coven for months and everything, and still Louis is like, the architects of our creation. Exact words Lestat said.
Or fledgling, you chase after phantoms of your former self. I'll break you of it.
Not a comment on that either.
Be more difficult.
The curtain goes up at 8.
We'll only be here an hour.
They'll seat us late and we'll miss Nora's entrance with the Christmas tree.
So when Louis and Lestat are walking into this Point du Lac family party. Lestat's complaining that they're going to be late to a play. And the play that he's talking about is a play called A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. And it was published in 1879. God, I hope I'm right. Where'd it go? I made a post about this, so I'll find it on my own stuff real quick. Here it is. Okay, so yeah, 1879. So Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. And A Doll's House is a play that completely rocked the world when it came out. And it's written by Henrik Ibsen, who is, I got Northern Europe, Norwegian. Henrik Ibsen, Norwegian, yes. And he writes this play, and it's a story focusing on a character named Nora, who is a young wife and mother who starts to question sort of these traditional roles that she has to play in society. And so she goes kind of on this like journey of self-discovery, right? And there's so many like themes that could be explored within it, but some are things like worth, societal expectation, individual freedom, women's rights, marriage, power, the very notion of what love is. And this play can be really tied in with Louis as a character, especially as the season progresses, because one of like the big parts of the play is this Christmas tree that Lestat's talking about. It's brought in and it's this big full Christmas tree, but the more that Nora starts to experience that things aren't going great in her marriage and like her family life, the tree dies like throughout the play. Like you just see it become worse and worse and worse. And if you go back to, is this episode 7? Yeah, it's episode 7. Season 1, episode 7, when they are in their plan to kill Lestat. There's a scene where Louis is decorating a Christmas tree while Lestat is playing piano and Claudia comes in and they play piano and everything. And this is during the time where Louis is trying to give like the illusion that everything is really great and he and Lestat are fine in an attempt to keep Lestat unknowing of this plan. But in the process, Louis is falling back in love all over again, and it's a complete mess, as we know. But what's interesting is like, so when he's decorating this Christmas tree is that this sort of peak faux happiness that they're exhibiting, and you tie that in with everything that happens. And I think the big thing is that part of why Louis and Lestat don't work in season 1 is that this relationship, this marriage has to be equal, and it's simply just not. And neither of them are in the place for it to become that during season 1. Things had to happen, people had to change. Again, Sam Reed says it in one of his interviews where he's like, yeah, like Loustat kind of had to like die to realize like that he messed up really bad and that he had to, you know, fix some things. And I think much like Nora, Louis starts to realize throughout season 1 that for this to work, it has to be something that's actually equal. And as he becomes more aware of life and the things that he wants, I think we're at a point where that could happen. But the way that this play ends, and the reason it caused such a commotion in the world in 1879, is because the play ends with Nora leaving her family, like leaves her husband, and she walks out and she slams the door. And like the reviews of this play talk about how like the door slamming was like felt around the world. And this was so controversial that I think it was in Germany, they like were trying to get him to rewrite the play. Like Well, no, but they like talk it out and work it out. And Henrik Ibsen was like, that completely defeats the purpose of what I'm talking about here. And so I sort of feel like the slam of the door is much like the heavy thump of the coffin lid that Louis puts Lestat in episode 7. Anyway, back to the show.
Dress up and have a fun time.
I see you have a banjo band in your front yard.
His face.
Is that necessary?
I love him. Also a snob. A music snob.
Me?
Different you. Better you, I'd say.
I think that Grace, and I think we see it in episode 1, you know, I think she knew and has known that Louis is gay. And so I think she immediately knew like what Lestat was to him, you know, when Louis was bringing a man around. Like, I don't think that was done lightly. And this scene makes me so sad because I think she sees how good this is for him, like being with someone that he wants to be with. And you know, I think he is a lot happier. I think there is some truth that he is living, and it brings him some kind of peace, and she's saying that. But we see it just as this episode progresses, let alone when we get to episode 4, that in turn his vampirism has him avoiding his family, and also just being with Lestat has him, I mean, like, you know, they're staying up nights and they're not doing daytimes, and he's running this business that he runs, and he's with somebody that he's just busy. And I think she views a lot of this as like Lestat's fault. Like, Louis never kept these weird hours till he met Lestat, and Louis never whatever, and so suddenly Lestat becomes not good for him. And so I don't think Grace has any actual issues really with like Louis' sexuality. I think her issues come from feeling like Lestat completely stole him because of how much his life had to change to be with Lestat and immortal vampirism.
We're gonna have himself the most profitable sporting house this side of Basin Street.
The Alderman certainly thinks so, but then you have to ask yourself why he sent me.
Exclusivity.
Yeah, bright and industrious, huh?
He should have been.
I trust you overseeing all stages of construction as well?
Yes, sir.
Farscape.
Thank you, sir. It was the call and response of my entire life. I had let them talk to me like that so long, I stopped hearing it. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Subject, verb agreement, sir. Smile, nod. Yes, sir. Now, decades of rage to process, and it was both random and unfortunate the man picked that night to dabble in fuckery. If not him, would have been the next one.
Oh my god, it's such a good line. I think about that line like once a week. The man picked that night to dabble in fuckery. What a good line. And like the delivery of it and the way that Louis can still recall just the absolute horrendous way that he was constantly treated, in a way that this highlights the stuff that Lestat isn't going to get right now. And again, a huge aspect of why they don't work at this point. And it's getting ready to come up in this fight that Louis and Lestat get in. And while the fight is very cute in like a very general way, there's a part where Lestat says like, yes, let's have this conversation again, which very much implies that Louis has tried to explain like race to Lestat on multiple occasions, and Lestat isn't getting it. And I think a huge aspect of Lestat not getting it is that he doesn't understand why Louis is caught up at all in anything that's human. Like, and Lestat views race as a human thing. He's like, no, like, we're vampires. We're an entirely different thing at this point. Where Louis is like, you're an entirely different thing, but I'm still here. I'm still who I am in New Orleans, because this is, I think maybe if they would have left New Orleans, like if they started fresh and started anew, potentially this wouldn't have been as big of an issue, potentially, because obviously, but because they stay in a place where Louis is still known and still recognized and still, you know, goes about things, I think that's what causes a lot of the issue here, is that for Louis, he's always going to be this New Orleans boy. He's always going to be a black boy. He's always going to be like all these things. And Lestat just doesn't get that. Lestat has walked around society as a white man, and has not only just walked around as a white man, but while his family was poor, he was an aristocrat. And so I just think all these things go into just too many differences going against them in a time period where those things going against them are very obvious and very constant.
He told me I did a good job.
You are a library of confusion.
Forget about America, Lestat.
Yes, let's have this conversation again.
Color, white, Creole, French, queer, half queer, mostly queer. What is it?
Non-discriminating.
So there's a little cute episode thing that aired on AMC in September, right before season 1 started, and it's like an interview with the Vampire season 1 behind the scenes, and it goes through all these like little things and whatever, and there's this like 5-second clip that shows Sam and Jacob's chemistry read over Zoom, and this was the scene that they were reading for it, and it's so interesting. It's like 5 seconds. I wish there was more. AMC, again, if you would ever love to give more footage, I will go through it. Just let me know. But the chemistry read is there's some things you don't get about America, Lestat. Yes, let's have this conversation again. And it goes through that whole little bit. And it's so funny how the line deliveries in the chemistry read, which had to be from like, they got cast in, the official casting announcements for them came out in August of 2021. So I'm thinking like April, May, I don't know. Either way, it's just like it's so eerily similar. I made a post about, like, I did like the chemistry read side by side with this actual scene, and Alan Taylor commented on it and was like, where did you get the chemistry read? And I'm like, sir, it aired on AMC, but also, hi, I love you. But it freaked me out. I saw Alan Taylor. I was at work and I went, and at work, AMC's blocked on our computers and we can't access it. So I like literally called a friend. I'm like, hey, do you remember where the chemistry read clip came from? And she was like, I think it's the behind the scenes thing for season 1. I'm like, I think so too, but I can't see because AMC is blocked. Will you check because Alan Taylor is asking? And she was like, yeah, I'll look. So anyway, we were right, but I had to double check because I didn't want to tell Alan Taylor the wrong thing. Okay, so the coffin scene here. This scene for me was a solidifying scene, really, in like how much I was going to love this show. Like obviously at this point I was completely hooked and loved everything, but this scene was so cute, and it's such a softer moment with them, and it ruined me. The idea of getting any kind of soft moment of their relationship killed me, and then seeing it, this was like such a foundational aspect of me just being like, oh, this show's everything to me, because I watched it and I just remember like I'm so sure my face was just cheesing the whole time. It probably will start cheesing again in a second. It's the cutest little scene, and it's like maybe a minute long, and it ruined my life.
I don't like sleeping angry. For the record, if disrespect was done to you, I would have killed him myself.
His little like...
What can I do to make it up to you?
I want to buy the Fair Play Saloon.
That's ambitious.
That's ambitious.
If you don't want to help, I'll do it myself.
He's being so rowdy.
Ridiculous of you to mix human and vampire business. It always ends poorly. But how can I stop you?
How can I say no to you?
How can I say no to you?
And his little fucking cheesy smile. No, he gets whatever he wants. Ruined my life.
Gesture on Lestat's part. That's a mighty tall ladder you're climbing.
He climbs that ladder every night, thank you.
And I was now the owner of...
Anyway, one thing I wanted to comment on was Lestat's comment of ridiculous of you to mix human and vampire business. Lestat and Armand, they're so annoying. They both have made comments in seasons 1 and 2 about Louis' like human hobbies and stuff, and like how they just don't get them and they're kind of crazy and whatever. And I'm like, you are both theater people. You are theater children. What part of you thinks that you have a right to tell Louis what's ridiculous and what's not? I say this as a theater kid. No right. Neither one of you have any right to tell him that him running this business or that him doing photography is ridiculous or crazy. You are theater people.
From Loustat. It was everything I had ever wanted or wished for.
The way Leistat's looking at him, again, you can't eat him there, but like, we get it, you love him.
All things with you and is Lestat still right?
Yes, it's Lestat.
See, like that, like resentment, and then the way that she shushes him because like their mother might hear, or her husband might hear, or just the general, I think, saying it too loud.
On the stools too. Tastes great this evening. Let me fix you some.
I have things to say about the baby in a second.
You look good. You should stay the night.
His face here.
I'm sure my mom would love to see it.
Siblings, man. Having this absolute crisis. He's like, I'm sure mom would love to see you. And he's like, they immediately giggle again like they're kids. Okay, we're gonna pause it here because I want to talk about the baby. The baby represents so many things for Louis. I mean, like, the list is extensive, honestly. First of all, let's talk about the obvious, as Louis' fangs are out on the screen. He wants to eat the baby. He does. It's a natural predator instinct to go after the weakest things. And what is weaker than a baby? So his predator instincts are in high drive right now, and they're like, hey, here's a really easy thing. Let's eat it. And so Louis is immediately at this conflict with his vampiric nature and his human nature, and also just basic morality of like, you probably shouldn't eat a baby. There's also the tie that the baby represents to his family, right? Like, here's Louis, who is still around his family, but he's not around often, given what like he hasn't even met the twins yet, and she's already had another baby. So even if like there's not been like a ton of time between all of this, there's enough time that she's had another pregnancy and has given birth to another child. So we're looking at least at like 2-3 years right now. And so the baby represents this tie-in with his family that he's losing hold of every single second. And then, given the scene that immediately follows after this, the baby also represents something that Louis desperately wants, which is he does want his own child. He does want his own family. And that's such an impossibility to him, because again, not only are they both men and just the general aspects of it, but like, even if one of them was a woman, like, they're black and white, which is not some like, and I've always thought about that regarding like their relationship in the show, is like how odd people around town must think them to be, because like, sure, Louis hangs around the white businessmen of Storyville, but not like hanging out with them on a casual daily basis. And so like whatever's going on here has to just be bizarre to these people. So then like there's that going into it. And then there's just the fact that like they're vampires. Like it's just like Louis's desire for family, for children is something that's in the books. And like when he does go after Claudia in the book, and I wish I had the line marked right now, but like there's a part when like he first goes after Claudia. Okay, so like it's here on page like 78 and 79, which is right after Louis has like first attacked Claudia. And Lestat, like, he's simultaneously like trying to teach Louis, but doing so in like a very mocking manner. And he's like making fun of Louis's like desire for a child here. And so he's like mocking like the fact that Louis attacked a kid. He's like, oh, like I want a child tonight. I blah, blah, blah. And then she's there, your wounded one, your daughter. And Louis like, what are you talking about? And Lestat says, you saved her. I knew it. You left the window wide on her and her dead mother, and the people passing by the street brought her here. And so just mocking Louis's desire that led him to Claudia in the first place and all this stuff. So Louis's like desire for children and desire to like have children is something that shows up in the text and is like a huge aspect of what leads to Claudia's turning in the books. And so this is all like a warring conflict going on with Louis right now. And I just think that they just do so much sometimes with so little in these scenes. It's fascinating.
No longer kill. My last victim was in the year 2000.
My last victim was in the year 2000. 2000 is the year that Marius was published. I don't really think that has anything to do with anything, but I think it's interesting because Marius is the book where Louis attempts to kill himself, like he does in season 2, episode 5, in the 1973 flashback. And obviously we know Louis didn't stop killing right after that because it's 1973, and then he says last kill wasn't till 2000. But I find like the year a little interesting, mostly because one, it makes you wonder like why, what did cause this to happen. So this puts us at 22 years since he's killed a human being. I wonder if that's going to change anytime soon.
Did you eat the baby?
I sit here, a master of my instincts.
I sit here a master of my instincts. What about the others out there? Have they? Just the opposite. Like his weird confidence that he has like perfected vampirism. Only like to know that he completely changes his entire mind by the end of this. Louis.
Traveling of geopolitical foundations.
And you know this how? You guys have a thread on 8chan?
I hear them. Our thoughts can travel thousands of miles to one another. I can stand out on my balcony, close my eyes, and their plotting speaks to me. One of them, a brute in Madagascar, called it the Great Conversion.
The Great Conversion.
The Great Conversion.
This has to do with the Akasha stuff coming up. There's no way it doesn't. This Great Conversion, this knowledge of the other vampires, which obviously we see come into play with Louis, you know, them all threatening to kill him post-interview, everything and whatever. The way he's talking about like the plotting, somehow this is all going to tie in with everything that happens with Akasha's awakening coming after Lestat, everything that happens leading up to trying to get Lestat back from Akasha. This is all tied in with this Great Conversion thing. We're gonna see this pop up for at least the next 2 seasons, if not 3 seasons. I'm anticipating it being much more detailed this upcoming season, and then season 4 is where we're going to see actually it come into like a full focused centralized plot, but I love that they're throwing it in this early because I swear that's going to show up. If it shows up, somebody owes me like $5. Nobody agreed to that, but that's my bet.
Right. Hello, Damek.
Hey.
How do you get this job of vampire blood bag? Is this a common thing? Again, the noises are super loud in my headphones.
He's American.
American demic. Yeah, that was like a slurpy sound.
Kites.
I was ready to tear into him. I'm never gonna get control over it.
He's the saddest boy in America.
I grow fearful of you if I haven't already.
I can't do it.
It's a rite of passage for all of us.
Okay, so obviously this scene's super cute. I'm going to comment on that in a second. But Lestat told, this is a rite of passage for all of us, talking about letting go of your family. Sir, you turned your mother within like 45 seconds of being a vampire. I don't want to hear it.
I'm your family, Louis.
It's such a devastating scene because you can put yourself in both of their shoes. You can see like the heartbreak on both aspects. Like Louis is losing everything he's ever known. And like this is coming after having already lost Paul and whatnot. And then you've got Lestat feeling like Louis doesn't include him as this idea of family and what family means to Louis, which I don't think is the case, but Louis doesn't verbalize that like at all. Louis doesn't verbalize a lot. That's like, you know, obviously a huge component of things. And it's heartbreaking on both levels, but I love how soft-spoken Lestat is in this scene. It is... I'm very excited for season 3 for obviously a multitude of reasons. But one reason I'm really excited for season 3 is there really isn't anybody quite like Lestat to give a romantic monologue. And I'm just anticipating a lot of those in season 3. But like the way this man is going to talk about Louis at different points, it's going to be almost embarrassing. It's just such a very soft-spoken bit of love and adoration. And then, like, following up with what's about to happen with this whole Louis, like, you should just throw me in the fire and make a new one. And, just, it's so cute.
Centuries walk this earth and can report you have no twin. No one as angry, as stubborn, as unaccommodating, as maddening,
like trash,
as loving, as dedicated, as thoughtful, as imperfectly perfect as you've become. You're a challenge every sunset, St. Louis, and I'd have it no other way.
Oh my god. Yeah, nobody does a romantic monologue. Also, this whole like, there's nobody as loving, as dedicated, as whatever. I think we're gonna see a lot of that if they do New Orleans flashbacks and any kind of longevity in season 3. Because Louis doesn't show a lot of that of himself. He doesn't not show it. There's absolutely aspects where we see Louis' loving and Louis' softness, but it's not done a ton from his point of view. Partially because at this point he's still ashamed that he loves Lestat and everything because he thinks Lestat and the whole Claudia thing. Anyway, but also just because I do think there's a vulnerability of it that Louis is still not quite ready to expose on himself, where like Lestat doesn't give any cares about that kind of, like, he's just going to be himself. Unapologetically, Lestat is just kind of like the way that he has lived his life always, and you see that all the time. You have no twin. I have a lot of thoughts on that line, and I don't want to get too into it because it's a lot about Nikki in both like the fandom and just also in the series, and I don't have a lot of complimentary things to say about Nikki at really any given point, so I'm gonna like withhold most of my commentary on that for now. But I think that line's incredibly important and I love it. a lot.
How about Rome?
Rome, Italy? Would you prefer Rome, Wisconsin?
Rome, Italy?
Would you prefer Rome, Wisconsin? Settle for Rome coming to us.
Rome is my favorite city. I was just there 2 months ago. I live by the Spanish Steps because the Keats Shelley house is there, and that's where I spend a lot of my time. Every time I go to Rome, is at the Keats Shelley house, and I did visit the non-Catholic cemetery for the first time this year. It was a 40-minute walk from where I was staying. I was kind of staying near the Colosseum when I was there, and I just walked to it because I was like, why not? And then proceeded to be the first person at the cemetery that morning, and they were like, hi, what are you here for? And I was like, the Keats grave. And then I sat there and cried for 45 minutes. Anyway, that's irrelevant to this. I love Rome though, and I'm just saying that, like, if Louis is not going to take Lestat up on his Rome holiday, I will go to Rome.
Another opera.
Not another opera. Donizetti's comic masterpiece, Don Pasquale. I was an acquaintance of his, and I saw the premiere at the Salvando do 73 years ago, and I remember it like it was yesterday.
I almost stayed my nephew Lestat.
American debut, her fifth up in a
It's
20.
such a married thing. Lestat's just like, we're doing this. I'm so excited. Louis is like, I just told you a crisis I'm having. Are you not paying attention? And then they both get distracted because they love each other. The end.
To city tour, so the orchestra should be an exhibit form. I have a private box, and I had tuxedos made.
Oh, look at his little feet. They're crossed. There's another take of this scene very briefly that's in season 2, episode 8, when Louis is like recalling things at the beginning of the episode, like, if I wore a different suit, whatever. And this is such, again, the romantic gesture, the romantic monologues, it's so cute. And then it loses some of its cuteness because of, like, Louis having to be valet at the opera house, and that's just like, again, the whole why they can't work right now, why this falls apart so much during the first season. But this actual part, and there's disgusting shared looks with one another. I mean, get it, you're in love. Like, why are you, don't look at him like that. I know you're in love with that man. I've been neglectful of our romance.
Steadfast people deserve
so gross. Steadfast people deserves a divine reward. Oh my God.
God. And again, he had a way about him, so that as I sat there trying to practice restraint, simmering in my indignation.
So this scene is the first scene that they filmed. The Opera House. They answered that on a Reddit Q&A that they did during season 1, and Sam got it wrong, and then Jacob was like, no, it was the Opera House, and Sam was like, Jacob was correct, yeah, that was right. But yeah, this is their first scene that they filmed, which is crazy when you watch this scene. Like, the amount of emotion that they're displaying as their characters, the range, and then the way that they so seamlessly, like, move and work together in this scene alone. I'm like, you two have known each other for like 3 minutes. What? That's crazy.
And take precaution.
And never part. So obviously I'm sure that this whole loneliness thing is very overwhelming and daunting and whatever, but the way that Lestat and Armand both put so much pressure on Louis to deal with their own abandonment and issues of being alone, like, that's just a lot of pressure for one person, for 2 incredibly powerful vampires to be throwing on him. Like, and they're old. Like, Louis is a child. Louis is 33 years old right now. Lestat's what, like 150 something at this point right now? Which would put Armand at, if Armand's 514 in 2022, I can't do math. What are times tables? Old. Like, it's old men putting so much pressure on this baby.
And from food, music pierced his damned soul. And any humans who were involved in the creation of it existed on an elevated plane in his eyes.
Somebody you love
I was moved to see he too had his human attachments.
So overwhelming. And the way that Louis watches Lestat take in this like play and this music, and oh my God. See, this is what I mean about he loves that man. He loves that man so much. He just won't say it. And Lestat's not, it's like he's always looking at him when he's not looking back, like that kind of thing. Oh my God, that he loves that man an ungodly amount.
And that was the tenor playing Ernesto. To be kind, he did not live in the soprano's vocal stratosphere.
Okay, that's like a visceral reaction to the tenor singing badly. I can't say anything because 2 years ago, like right after this episode aired, I think it was like November of 2022, I went to go see my favorite Broadway musical was doing a national tour. And I don't want to say which one because then people can look up who was doing stuff. But there was somebody in one of the lead roles who was flat the whole time. And I just remember like I felt kinship to this scene because I was like, who put them on the stage? And I just like I felt this like in my heart. I was like, oh God, where are my music notes to bloody up when they miss them? Because
Road company, but are they pulling talent from roadside gas station?
also, let's not.
Boy, in less than half an hour.
We need more Italian. Season 3. If I don't have Lestat and Gabrielle talking to each other in Italian, I'm gonna fight because I actually can understand that part.
Well, I like to do it. I enjoy it.
Well, I don't. You don't have to humiliate him.
Okay. So first of all, this is a very iconic cruise and pit scene in the movie. I like to do it. I enjoy it. And I'm like not trying to be biased, but I'm not even being biased. It's just facts at this point. Can it be biased if it's correct? The way that these two just deliver it, it's amazing. It's so much more okay, so this I like to do it, I enjoy it, comes in on page 75 in the books. Why do you do this, Lestat? I asked. I like to do it. He said, I enjoy it. He looked at me. I don't say you have to enjoy it. Take your aesthete's taste to purer things. Kill them swiftly, if you will, but do it. Learn that you are a killer. Ah, he threw his hands up in disgust. The girl had stopped screaming. Yeah, the way that this entire scene is delivered with Sam and Jacob having the frustrated anger and then the satisfaction Lestat has with his kill versus Louis' kind of disgust and fear and I don't know, like the multiple levels of Louis, like, I'm not right. I'm not doing this right because this isn't fun for me. I'm not having a good time.
If you listen to me, if you finally submit to your nature, you will be filled, Louis, with all the life you can hold. You'll see death in all its beauty. Life as it is only known at the very point of death. You alone of all creatures can see death with that impunity. You alone, under the rising moon, can strike like the hand of God. And
okay. So first of all, this speech comes in on page 73. Right near the bottom, Lestat's just been talking about Babette, actually, who's not in the show. He says, you will be filled, Louis, as you were meant to be, and with all the life you can hold. And you will have hunger when that's gone for the same, and the same, and the same. The red in this glass will be just as red, the roses on the wallpaper just as delicately drawn, and you'll see the moon the same way, and the flicker of a candle, and with the same sensibility that you cherish, you will see death in all of its beauty, life as it is only known at the very point of death. Don't you understand that, Louis? You alone of all creatures can see death that way with impunity. You alone under the rising moon can strike like the hand of God. And then this gets right into the vampires are killers, predators whose all-seeing eyes. So that entire speech, those are related. This is one of my favorite line deliveries by Sam Reed. It's almost otherworldly, like almost godlike, in the sense of like the power that Lestat holds in this situation and holds as this, like, to Louis, like all-knowing vampire. It's such a good delivery, and then it's also just, hold on, the blood stain on his teeth, the blood stain, like, just like right on like this inner part of his mouth. His mouth scar is like super deep on this side, and just whoever decided that camera angle, I owe you my life. With respect, whoever was like, this is exactly how this is supposed to go. Moving on. But this delivery, genuinely, one of my favorites. It's a very powerful delivery for a very imperative scene about Lestat and Louis' relationship and the way that it's doomed from the start.
Was that night Lestat completely enthralled?
I'm not gonna comment on what I want to say, but
pretending to be.
Gonna not. You know what I'm saying.
Afraid to disappoint.
This line kills me.
Taste. I was a shame-ridden second, a fumbling, despondent killer. Botched vampire.
Okay, so this like last scene, Louis' speech about I was never going to enjoy the kill, I was a botched vampire, all this stuff, and then going immediately into why he eats dessert, a human meal all the time, to maintain this human thread connection, and then immediately showcasing a softer moment between Louis and Daniel for really the first time since this has all started for them. I ache for Louis a lot because I feel like his self-esteem is just entirely non-existent even at this point. I feel like that's also part of his like finding himself by the end of this season 2 has to do with this like self-esteem thing. But Louis' self-esteem just gets shattered. I swear, like every second something's happening that just shatters and tears apart who he is, who he wants to be, and he's constantly striving to be stuff that he's not, and that is unattainable for him because it's not who he is. Oh, it just wrecks me, and I ache for him a lot, and I feel like this episode starts to highlight that, and then the next episode, especially with the stuff with Antoinette, which I'm not going to be nice about, not necessarily about Antoinette, about Lestat, because I'm mad at him all the time about it. All the stuff there, it just wrecks me. I just feel for him so much. But Interview with the Vampire, Season 1, Episode 2, After the Phantoms of Your Former Self, is... I can never say like an episode's my favorite, really, outside of Episode 1, because every episode of Interview with the Vampire is a 10 out of 10 in some kind of way. There are ones that are more enjoyable for rewatching purposes. And this is one of those, truly. Because you do get those like softer, sweeter moments at the beginning. But I love this episode. I love what it sets up and how it sets it up. The foreshadowing that is displayed here for both future episodes of Season 1 and then going into Season 2. And like I said, I think going into these later seasons that will be upcoming over the next couple years. I'm really grateful constantly for the writing team and for how they incorporate little details that have a lot of meaning and a lot of weight to them. And I think this episode starts to showcase so many of those as we enter those vampire years with Louis and kind of the teaching aspect that he goes through here. And I hope that you guys enjoyed episode 2 as much as I did, revisiting it and looking back at all that we have. I'm curious if anybody has like any ideas on this great conversion thing and can make any more sense about it, because it is what I think is the most intriguing thing going into season 3 and stuff with Akasha. So if you have any thoughts on that, please let me know, because I'm really interested in exploring that the more, hopefully, that we start to get news on season 3. But thank you for joining me for this watch. I hope that you did enjoy getting to watch in this second episode revisit of season 1. And next week we will get into episode 3, Is My Very Nature That of the Devil, which bears a lot of weight, especially as it ends, of course, with our dear darling Claudia. But I will see you guys next week for a look at season 1, episode 3. Hot. Everybody be proud of me. This isn't coffee. It is exactly 10 p.m. Sunday night. I do have work tomorrow. I gotta get up at 4:30 because I gotta get in early because I didn't do other stuff. And this is hot chocolate. I did a good job. I'm gonna cut this out because I don't think I don't feel confident enough in saying that.